Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay. What's up?
Hey, can I say, even though you and I mean, by like recording and behind the scenes, I've been part of the Scoundrels since day one, right? And how long have I been co-hosting with you? A couple of years now, right?
I lost track. But
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, because you, Mike, and I were doing it for a while, and then we started the rotation of so anyways, I've been part of Scoundrels for the last 5 years in one way or another. But when it's just you and I, it just seems weird. Like, I don't know why. Like, it's just like, no, this isn't Scoundrels. This doesn't vibe, you know? Kyle and I need a third party to get along, I think. No, I'm just
I was trying to figure out where you're going with this.
I don't know. No, it's just because Scoundrels has always been a three person cast, and the Fifth Trooper was the old 2-person cast. And so it's like sometimes when it's just you and I, I'm like, it doesn't feel like a Scoundrels
episode. Throws off the routine.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But
it is. Yeah. I feel that. Well, today's going to be a hobby episode because it's you and me, and that's what it is when it's just you and me.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something about taking last week off so that you guys could talk competitive, but based on my recent mindset, I think I'm going to be back in on those competitive podcasts because I don't know, just real quick, because we are doing hobby today, but like Kyle and I were talking just before we hit record, and I got a local store championship invite and with Echo Base, and I got bit hard by the competitive bug. And so like that's literally all I've been thinking about lately as I'm painting my Ewoks and getting things ready. I'm just like, okay, there's another store championship, another tournament, another, this coming up. Can I make it to that one? What am I going to play? What do I need to practice? Yeah, so I'm doing it different from how I did it before. So I think we talked about on here about, I had Luke Sabine and I played it for a full year. That was the only list I played. I played it everywhere to get good. And now I'm going in the opposite, where every tournament I go to, I'm going to take a different list. But they're all going to be good lists that I think could win. So this next tournament coming up in a few weeks, I'm between two lists. I have this Cassian K2 Ewoks 12 activation list that I think might be pretty good. Or I may actually try Anakin clones just to give it a shot.
Just to experience it. Do you even have clones?
Oh yeah, I have.
Not sure I've ever seen you play.
I have the full 501st painted. I have everything. So yeah, I could field it. For sure. But then what happens is I start building, I look at what you guys have played with Anakin and stuff. I saw some stuff when I played this tournament recently. And I start building something out, but then I'm like, boy, but I really want to play Yoda. Like, and I know he's not like top tier right now, but it's just like one of those things that I've seen so many good Yoda lists that it's just interesting in my mind. You know what I mean?
Well, Yoda just won Gen Con.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Danny Gear mode.
Yeah, I mean
but yeah, I mean Yoda's good.
So anyways. But yeah. Now I'm back into the competitive spirit. So I'm really excited to, I know, and it's weird. I have a confession to make.
Okay.
And I know this is going to be crazy. I know it's crazy. And I don't know the reasoning. I can't explain it to you guys. There's no logical reason behind this. I, for some reason, have no interest in playing Tempest. And I don't know why. Like, I can't even.
It's literally like the list that is designed for your
I know.
historical style.
I know. And I could care less.
Is it just because you like double heavied out?
I bet that could be the reason. And okay, even with a list like Tempest, right? Even with that Battle Force and those cards, you're still fighting a certain type of battle with double or triple heavies. It's just a certain style of playing that can be heartbreaking if you make mistakes, and I think anybody who's tried Tempest knows what I'm talking about, where if the simplest of mistakes with that list, you push too fast too soon, you don't hold when you need to hold, and stuff like that, it can kind of start falling apart a little bit. It can be a little bit of a glass cannon with the heavies. And so it's just like I'm painting another ATST, like, don't get me wrong. I love ATSTs, but I'm just like, this is not going to be fun to play. And it has that, I think also it has that extra weight for me personally, because I do talk a big game with double heavies. I have played a lot. I mean, I talk a big game because I'm relatively good at playing double heavies. But now, like, going to a tournament with that is like a different step of dedication to that list that I just, for whatever reason, am not capable of punching that card yet. I'm sure I will. It's just, I don't know.
It's surprising, but I feel you.
Yeah, I
It's,
thought, I thought at first, so the first tournament that we just went to recently, I thought it was because, like, in my head I was like, oh, a bunch of people are going to have Tempest, and I don't want to play triple heavy versus triple heavy. I just don't want to play that game. It's miserable and it's not fun. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take Echo and just run a counter to like Dark Troopers and Tempest. Then like one person brought it, and I was like, okay, well, and then you really haven't seen it much out in the world or heard about people playing it, and now, so that excuse isn't there any longer. So I'm like, oh well, why don't I want to play it? Like, because I just have no passion to play it at all, and maybe I've moved on as a player. I don't know. It's just yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm double heavy. I mean, I did just play double air speeder.
Yeah, which is different, a very
Yeah,
very different kind of double heavy. But
yeah. And
no,
I was just thinking at the
fair.
time, I'm like, man, I really don't want to put 3 ATSTs on the table, like, and play that style of game. It's just, it can be grueling for everyone, and I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So anyways, I know that was my confession for today, secret time. So
There's something to be said for variety.
yeah, but I mean, I figure eventually I'll do it. I'm just going to cycle through a bunch of different lists, that either are proven good lists like Anakin clones, or even ones I think have potential, like this Cassian one I'm looking at. And so I'm going to cycle through good lists, just see what else is out there, see how things play, see how I play against, I think just being well-rounded and play, and I think that's one of the things, as much as we make fun of you, Kyle, for doing it, waffling and having like 3 different lists that you want to play for every tournament. I think playing list variety may actually give you a better understanding of the game, as much as playing one list consistently for the 10,000 hours makes you perfect with that list. I'm trying something new now, and I'm like, you know what? Now I want to see what happens if I play a bunch of different highly competitive lists, and maybe I'll learn something from that.
Yeah, I found it's really helpful just for general perspective and also for like bias elimination to play lots of different things.
Yeah.
It gives it. I feel like it gives me a better sense of like how to actually dissect like what's good and what's just something that I had a bad or a good experience with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like, and that's actually, originally I was just a Rebel player. And the first time I branched into another faction, obviously it was just Empire at the time because Clone Wars wasn't out yet. And I did so with the express purpose simply of like seeing what things were like from the other side.
Yeah.
And then, obviously I started collecting and playing Empire too.
I've
so
never gone back.
I have played Rebels since then.
Oh yeah, when OP Luke came out, that's right, you went back for a while.
Yeah, and then in fact I played double airspeed or triple Wookiee for that
Oh,
was
that's
back in
right.
like
Yeah,
2021.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so yeah, I've done a couple different rebel lists since
Mm-hmm.
I defected. Maybe defected is the wrong word, but since I started playing Empire, I have
Yeah,
definitely had more success with Empire over that time period.
yeah.
Um, but
Well, and the thing I find curious that we don't talk about enough, and I'm sorry, I know this is a hobby episode, and we'll get to that.
eventually,
But the thing I find curious, so we go as pontificators, right? We say, hey, this CIS or rebels aren't really good right now, right? Like they're probably, but when I look at like some of these tournaments and like these bigger events, and I look at the lists, I'm like, well, how do we know for sure? Because no one is playing a list that I would consider good with that faction. Do you know what I mean? And then we're like, well, see, that proves rebels are bad. And then I'm going in my head, I'm like, yeah, but nobody played like I think this speeder echo base list is really good, and you don't see much of that. And I think, or I think Cassian, there's some 12 activation Cassian lists that I think are pretty well suited for the current meta. And you don't see a lot of people playing those. And so it's interesting to me to like want to go and play things that I think are good and see why. Like maybe I'm wrong and I'm not thinking through it, but in my head, I'm like, well, we don't even know if it's good or not because no one's playing what I would consider good list for that archetype, anyways.
yeah, I feel like that conversation kind of gets lost in hyperbole sometimes. In
Mm-hmm.
that, I think it's rare for like an entire faction to be bad.
Yeah.
There have been times in the game when that's been true. Like Empire went through kind of a rough spell, um, back in the like Republic token sharing meta. And then conversely, Republic went through kind of a rough spell after that big like um, patch that buffed Empire.
Yeah.
But other than possibly those two exceptions, I can't think of like an extended period of time in the game where one faction has just had like literally nothing that it can play. That's good. I think a lot of that perception, particularly about rebels and droids right now, comes more from like their internal balance in that
Yeah.
they both have enough very good units that they can make like a handful of very good competitive lists. Rebels, you got Cassian and K2, obviously. You've got Echo Base.
Yeah.
Now you've got Ewoks. But like all of those lists, unless they're Bright Tree Village, are centered around, for example, Rebel Vets.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of the reason that the faction like often doesn't feel good to play or make lists for, because the core box core trooper unit is not good. And there's a slew of rebel heroes that are just like very bad.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a slew of other rebel units that are very bad. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that
And
like
it
Empire and Republic don't
right.
have bad units, but they definitely have
Less. Yeah.
yeah, it's more that like the stuff that's good is kind of clustered more towards the top for some of the others. And it doesn't mean that like clearly there's enough highly competitive rebel and droid units to make lists that can win and do well.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in recent results. Austin won LSO with
Right.
droids. He was one of 3 droid players in that 60 plus person tournament. And he played in the final against another Floridian who brought Cassian and Ahsoka, which is a rebel list,
Yeah.
So
well, and
and
I
then
suppose, like just thinking about that, right? Like I think a lot of people think the same way we do, right? And go, well, no one's playing this list. That's why they're not winning. And then they go to the tournament playing that list that they think is good. And then we all go, well, I wouldn't have brought that list. Like that's the whole
yeah,
unfortunate cycle that we're all in as gaming nerds here, right? Is trying to like we all think we're gonna crack the code eventually, and not all of us can be a code cracker and be the first ones to bring whatever it was that bring saboteurs and crush everybody like
yeah,
Lupo did.
yeah,
you know
yeah. And ultimately, the most deterministic factor in every game is player skill still in Legion.
Yeah.
I think it's been watered down a little bit, but not like nearly as much compared to other games. So, you know, I mean, you look at, I mean, we're not really going to talk about Gen Con that much in this episode because everyone's still traveling, and you know, we'll do that probably in a future competitive episode. But Danny won with Yoda, and like a bunch of naked stuff. Basically, it's a 10 activation list with Yoda, Chewie, R2 with 3PO, naked Barks, and naked Phase Ones. It's like
strange.
Wow. I mean, it's clearly a straight pure objective list. You know, he's got bombing run, breakthrough, hostage, and recover. Yoda, Chewie, obviously ridiculous at both hostage and recover, and then he's got the 3 Barks for those other 2 objectives, and then R2 to score secret mission. So, and he's got like a 13-point bid or something like that. So it's clearly like a straight objective list, and that's which I think is very impressive. I don't think I could play a list like that. But obviously he can, and you know, that's a way to, I mean, objectives is literally how you win Legion, and you can do that sometimes without even killing anything. So
it's actually, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And so I just want to get out there more. I want to play more. My goal this year is, you know, so the last few years we've had like a booth presence, and like I've been working at Adepticon, and so I haven't been able to participate in Worlds. Actually, every Adepticon I have not played at Adepticon. I've worked. I am not working this Adepticon. I'm going to play. I mean, I'm sure I'll work in between the playing, but doing something. But I already told Rachel, I've told our whole team, Jay's not working at Worlds this year. The work Jay's doing is to get a World Championship.
There you go.
That's my goal.
Team 5th Trooper bringing the heat.
Yeah. Let's go.
All right. Well, this has been a very competitive hobby podcast.
Sorry,
so far.
I'm so sorry.
It's actually not my fault.
It actually, you know what? Here's the transition. In all of this competitive thoughts that I've been having, it's making me prep the other armies now and actually get them ready to go. So I have been painting a lot more, which is good and bad. I don't know about you, Kyle, but especially in a time like right now where the lists that I have in my mind that I'm going to bring at the next tournament are already painted lists. And I didn't choose it because they were already painted. It just happened to be the ones I wanted to bring, and they're painted. I have a freedom as to what I want to paint right now, which is really bad for me because I've got like over at my painting station here, I've got like Ewoks and ATS, another ATS. I've got like, you know, I've got I'm working on the tank, the saber tank for the clones. Like I've got like 5 or 6 different like little stations of minis that I've begun to paint and then stopped and then, you know, gotten back to. It's wild.
Yeah, the pile of shame is real.
Yeah.
I have real trouble painting anything unless I like specifically need it for a tournament. And that's been enough to end up with 4 fully painted factions basically over the years. But yeah, I have a really hard time just like sitting down and being like, you know what? I don't need this guy, but I just want to paint him.
Yeah.
That used to be the case for me with 40K for whatever reason. I mean, part of it is life stage, right? I've got 3 kids, the oldest of which is 6. So
we didn't make those decisions for you, Kyle. You made that decision.
That's just where I am, which means that my hobby time is extremely I don't know if, I mean, limited is definitely true, but like highly allocated might be better. Like I want to get stuff done, and I want to get stuff done quickly in a way that looks good enough for me. And I generally like don't want to, I mean, waste time is the wrong word because painting is never wasting time. It's fun.
Yeah, but it's like, hey, I want to run this at a tournament. I gotta get this done.
I need to prioritize stuff that I'm actually going to use. So
so I know this is interesting. So a lot of people ask about this. They always want to see my ATSTs. So this is a new one that I'm working on, number 6 or 7. But yeah, this is gonna be Lord Farquaad once I
There you go.
yeah. So he's kind of like a war.
Skull and crossbones on the front there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so that's I just got the head, working on the head right now, and then the body, the rest of it'll come along as I go. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know about for people at home, but like for those of you watching on YouTube, like this is a very like weathered and like war torn, ATST. Like I love my vehicles.
Painting vehicles is so fun.
Yeah, and like I listen, I really appreciate all those clean, like beautiful, like fresh off the factory floor paint jobs that a lot of people are doing out there. But for whatever reason, I just don't have it in me to do that with mine. Like mine have to be like battle hardened, the paint's chipping off and there's some rust, and like now this one's an extreme, but like, even my bus, even my AAT for CIS, like they all in one way or another are like, just kind of like, I think it just tells the story better, like to have, like this in the middle of the battle kind of piece of equipment. I just, for whatever reason, that's what speaks to me. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, and I think Empire and Rebels are great candidates for that, simply
Yeah.
because the era has like a grittier look to it in general.
Yeah.
Clone Wars in the media has this very like clean, polished look, and certainly you can and should weather Clone Wars
Yeah.
vehicles, right? But I feel like the Civil War stuff lends itself more to that. This is my airspeeder.
Ooh.
And I definitely went heavy on the we didn't anticipate talking about weathering on this episode, but
Yeah.
but here we are. I know that the focus is crap
Yeah,
on
but it
this,
looks, you
but
could still see it pretty good. Yeah.
yeah. So this is one of my T-47s. I love doing rust effects and chipping effects on
Yeah.
vehicles.
Same.
And it's really like actually not hard at all. There are a million different ways to do it. I used a technique that I picked up off of just Rastro video, when he did way back when Legion first came out. He did a video on ATRTs and he did some weathering effects on that, and I basically just copied them for this. And I also used some other stuff from, I played orcs for 40k, so
Yeah.
if anyone has weathered vehicles,
Yep.
they're the ones that literally build them out of scrap. So but yeah, I love weathering vehicles. There's a million different ways to do it, from the very simple to the one of my favorite ways is to just take a like a little sponge, and you can even use like some of those foam cases have like the little
Yeah.
like rectangular things that you can kind of rip out to make like custom sized spaces for your minis. I have a bunch of those old ones that I don't really use anymore, so I have all these trays with foam in them, and I just rip out the little rectangles and you like bend them in half, and then you can you dip them in the paint to get like some paint on them, and then you just like kind of like dab them on whatever chipped color you want on your vehicle, and it gets like this chipping effect basically.
Yeah.
And that's like a super easy thing that really does not take very long either, and looks pretty good.
So yeah, I mean, I'll give one. So when you're doing, like, if you guys can see the like orange here, the rust kind of effect. So this is something I've actually learned recently in the last couple of years. But instead of like hard painting the orange on, what I do is I layer the paint and do, like, if I want to do textures or have stuff here, and then actually the orange for the rust you do more as a dry brush. And that actually helps give it a much more, I know it's there you go.
Yeah,
That helps. But yeah, it gives it like a cooler, like rust looking feel. So yeah.
does that actually
tip.
work? I feel like I should try this.
Oh, putting your hand behind?
Yeah, right. Like, or
Yeah,
at least like
sure.
even like a piece of paper, right? Just like do this.
Yeah.
Thing. I don't know.
Oh, you're too close. Oh, there you go. Much better. Yes. Yeah, you could see it above the cockpit, on the cockpit there. And yep.
Yeah, and that's just the chipping with the little sponge thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like the. Did you know there's a dry brush paint specifically for rust? It's called
Yes.
Rise Rust.
That is by Citadel, yeah.
Yeah.
Games Workshop, yeah. I do love that. Yeah, they have a combo because there's the brown that's got like it almost goes on like a wash, but it has little like particulates in it, so it actually
Typhus corrosion.
typhus corrosion, yeah.
Yeah.
That is really good too. And it
Yeah, I agree.
basically has grain in it. And so when you put it on, it creates like this dirty, and then you dry brush the rust on top of it. Oh, baby. It's so good. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll say this. I've been using a lot of different paints lately. And I've kind of settled into my sweet spots, I think, as I've been painting more. For my regular painting, like just layers and highlights and all that stuff, I use Monument hobby paints. They're so good.
I need to
Airbrushing,
try them.
yeah, there's, oh my god, it well worth it. They are
Okay.
so good. They like got this, they're just like silky smooth when they go on. It's, oh my god. um but then I love, I use for airbrushing, I use Army Painter.
Hmm.
And then in areas, I do use speed paints for certain areas, and so I use speed paint and contrast depending on the color now. And then all of for Citadel, I don't use their regular paints anymore. But what I do use is all their technical line, like all their
Yeah.
washes, their technical lines, their basing,
Yeah.
all of that is all premium product. And so yeah,
Yeah, that stuff is really good.
like I still, I use Nuln Oil in their medium for wash.
Yeah.
Like that's what I use. Like it's just they've got certain things just to like perfection that which is strange, right? That each one, like I find like Army Painter's really good with airbrushing stuff. Their airbrush line is primo. um Monument Hobbies, man, god, their paints are just, and I'm in that mode now too. So I used to be in the, like, you would get the, what do they call it, the try of the paints where it's the dark, the medium, and the light,
Yeah.
so that you
Hmm.
didn't have to mix anything.
Yeah.
But now I literally am at a point where I have the Monument Hobbies, they're like baseline. It's like 10 paints or something like that. But I just make my own colors by mixing paints now, and that's just how I love it. I love it so much. And it works so well with like just adding a little bit of water and just to
Hmm.
thin it out a little bit more. Oh my gosh. So good. The paints are so good.
I'll have to give it a shot. I admit that I am kind of a Citadel, at least when it comes to, I mean, airbrushing, I use Vallejo, but pretty
Yeah.
much everything else I use Citadel. And part of that is simply because like I'm familiar with all the colors because I've been using them for
Mm-hmm.
25 years. And I know what all the colors look like. I know when I want a specific look, which color I have to pick.
Yeah.
And also they're the paints that I have.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes
so like
sense.
when I run out, it's easier to buy like one pot of whatever I run out of. But I will definitely have to give Monument Hobbies a try sometime.
That's funny. See, and that's how, if you guys didn't know how different Kyle and Jay were, here's a perfect example. Kyle goes like, I know what paints I want to use, when I need a certain color. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I just find my way on my way
Yep.
there. I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do today. I'll figure it out as I go. Like, it's funny because that's like how I approach a lot of my art and like all my graphic design, all that stuff,
Hmm.
work that I do. It's like, there's guys out there that friends of mine that like plan and they like multiple like sketches and looks. And I'm just like, yeah, I'll figure it out on my way to the end. Like, that's just my style, and,
Yep.
and it works. Hey, it works. It's just, it's different. And I think some people probably think I'm insane, but it's just how I like, just find my way there. And like very much like Bob Ross, like I'll mess something up and I'll just be like, well, that was a happy little accident. I'm like, all
Yep.
right,
There are no mistakes.
we'll just work around it and
Yep.
let's just do something else.
Yeah. For me, everything has to be like I've got my progressions of each color, like locked in my
Yep.
head of like, oh, this is leather. I know which three brownish colors I'm going to use for that. Oh,
Yeah,
this is a blue armor color. I know which three colors I'm going to use for that progression.
that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like here's a perfect example. So you see this like where it looks like it got blasted in the side here on the
Hmm.
ATST. So that middle part, I actually messed up with the airbrush. I didn't clean my airbrush fat like I wasn't being smart, and I was
Yeah.
just trying to get a bunch done. And so it just like splattered paint on there. And
Mhm.
then I went to like wipe it off, but the layer below wasn't completely dry, so it just like chipped off right there. And I was like,
Mm.
it looks like it got hit by something. That's fine. I'll just put
There
some
you go.
rust. I'll put some rust around it and a blast mark, and that's what happened there. You know,
Yep.
like that's just my whole style. Like, oh, I didn't want that to be blue, but I got some blue paint on it because I wasn't paying attention, and so it's gonna be blue now.
Yep.
That's
I have yet to figure out how to turn Ventress's face into a happy little accident, but after I
Oof.
obliterated it with OSL.
Yeah,
Um,
man, I really messed up my Shatterpoint Ventress. I was working so hard. Like, I don't know about you or like people at home, but like I'll have days of like hyper focus where I'm just like on. I'm like, oh yeah, like man, I'm a painting genius. Like, look at this go. And then like the next day, I'm like so jacked to get back to it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get back to this. I'm gonna work. And then I immediately, like within the first 2 minutes, just like screw up
yep.
like a entire day's worth of hard work. And I just going, you idiot. Like,
Mm.
I just so like, what are you doing, man? Like, I get so angry.
Yeah, that usually happens to me when I'm trying to do new stuff with an airbrush.
Yeah.
Because those are like the least fixable mistakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Airbrush gets real bad real quick if you're
Yep.
not like
Hmm.
cleaning and 100% on it. Yeah. Like, oh
Well,
man.
yeah.
Yeah. I hate like when you exit, like sometimes I have a very old and finicky air compressor. So like I have to always mess with the dial to get the perfect
Mm.
like air
Hmm.
for whatever reason. Like nothing else changes. It's just old. And I just hate it when it's up too high and I go to spray and it just
Yep.
like splatters paint out. So
Hmm.
now I've like gotten in the habit that I like start off the model and then like make sure I like
Oh
prime it a
yeah.
couple times with air.
Hmm.
But these are all lessons you learn,
Yep.
and
Yep. Learn the hard way.
yeah. Trying to
Yeah.
think. Yeah, I mean,
Um.
the other thing I'm doing now too, I think we talked about it a little bit, but I prime in black and then I take the airbrush and I do the zenithal highlight in
Zenithal.
white
Yeah.
and then I paint from there.
Yeah. It
Um,
does make a difference. I know people are
it
like, does that
really
actually help?
does.
It
Yeah,
actually does make a difference.
it
Yeah.
really, really does.
Yep.
Just in like you do get the difference, right? So especially if you're using like a thinner paint, you'll definitely get the dark to light
Hmm.
underneath the paint, but also I find that it just helps to see the areas as well. Like
Hmm.
before when I would do something all white or all black or all gray, like you couldn't really tell things apart sometimes, like especially on smaller models, you're like, oh shit, is that its fur or is that still part of its
Hmm.
headdress? Like I can't tell. But when you do this black and then zenithal highlight, like I for the most part have a much better like idea of what things are on the model now, which is very helpful.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah.
Um, so the,
Fur?
yeah, actually, we should talk about fur. There's one more thing I want to talk
Okay,
about because
yeah, yeah.
it's what I'm literally currently working on. And that is ARC Troopers without flight stands. So
Oh yeah, right.
um, I know that people that are getting the 501st boxes. I don't know if they fixed it yet, but when they first came out, they didn't have flight stands in them.
That's correct. Yep.
I have flight stands anyway from other stuff. Like I
Yep.
have, whatever 5 droid specialist expansions because I'm one of those people that ran mass B2s briefly
Yep.
when it was good. So I have
Same.
plenty of flight stands,
Yeah.
but personally I really don't like how they attach to the minis, the ball
Yeah.
flight stands. So I was trying to think of something to do to have the flying ARC troopers not look ridiculous and also not use flight stands. Because unfortunately, if you put the flying ARC troopers like on the ground, the angles of their feet and stuff are weird, and it looks like they're just like randomly jumping off the ground, or like even
Yeah.
like if you put the feet flat on the ground and they're like
Yep.
leaning some weird way. So what I ended up doing was cutting up some boxes from Vital Assets,
Mm-hmm.
some of the boxes that you put like on the payload, and I think I actually did 3 ARC troopers with one box, several pieces of one box, and here's one of them. It's just basically like he's not He's not going very far off the ground, but it's enough that it's
Yeah.
essentially just a tactical box. You could easily use a rock or literally
AMG
some
was
other.
onto something this whole
Yeah,
time.
right. I know people like make fun of the
Yeah.
tactical rock or like dislike the tactical rock. Personally, I love the concept of the tactical rock. I think that it looks cool when it's
Yeah.
done. But anyway, here's my one arc tactical box. Here's
Love it.
another arc tactical box, and it's
Oh,
like a
yeah.
super easy way to do something
Yep.
with obviously these guys are not painted yet, but super easy way to do something with a component that you probably have already. You know, you don't need to go buy
Yep.
any hobby kits, although you could. Rocks obviously are very easy to make if you want to do tactical rocks for your arcs, but you know, tactical box, it's a vital assets box that is chopped up with a razor blade and glued at different angles on the arc based depending
Love
on
it.
how the guy was going off. So yeah,
Super
and
cool.
now I don't have to deal with flight stands. So,
Oh man, yeah, on the arcs and on the barks, God, they're the worst. They're just so bad on both.
do the barks have the ball flight stands too?
Yeah,
Or
well,
are they
they have.
pegs?
It's like a peg, but it's like strange, and they don't stick, and they break. Really, it's just like, dude.
They're like off center too, aren't they? The
Yeah,
barks. Yeah.
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 Clearly, I got 3 barks, and like every time I move them on the shelf, like one breaks, and I'm just like, dude,
Yeah.
are you serious? Like, it drives me crazy.
Yeah. I respect what they were trying to do with the ball flight stands. I think pegs are just that much more functional that
Yeah.
I would just rather have pegs. I really like the concept of like the curved flight
Yep.
stand. I think that looks way better than the straight flight stands, but I'd love to just see a peg on the end of it that you can stick into your mini. And if you want to cut it off and do some weird
Yeah.
angle, you can still do that. But the ball flight stands just don't stick
Like,
well enough.
you can't do it with vehicles, but I would love for them to, I think I've talked about it on here, but like to just get away from flight stands on the minis anyways and do what they're doing with like Shatterpoint and MCP where they use like smoke or
Yeah.
fire blast. Like
Mhm.
I would rather them just move to that. Like it's so much better.
It looks way better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just creates a much more like interesting model, you
Yep.
know.
I agree.
Which I get the idea. Flight stands a very old, you know, minis technique to show flying, but I think AMG, to their credit, came up with a much better way of doing it. And you know, like I mean, the Mandalorians in Shatterpoint are beautiful. Like, and they've got the you know
With
the
the smoke
flame and the
trails.
smoke
Yeah.
trails coming down, and that's what's like holding them up. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, we should have been doing this whole time.
Yep.
You know, I just think yeah, they do really good with that stuff. Really good.
For sure. Yeah, it'd be awesome to see that on some Legion minis.
Yeah.
Okay. Fur. This was supposed to be an episode about painting fur.
It'll be 10 minutes about fur. It's
Yeah,
fine.
we don't have
We
to
don't
talk
need that
long
much
about
time.
fur. There's not that many. I mean, I guess there are quite a few different fur techniques, but we can hit them quickly because they're not really that complicated.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about your fur technique, Jay?
Yeah.
This is not a speed painting fur technique.
No. So
which is kind of unique among fur techniques because most fur techniques are very fast.
Yeah. So in my infinite wisdom, I've decided that I'm going hardcore into the Ewoks. I've talked about this many times. Well, one of the things that I have made the decision is there's multiple fur techniques. We could talk about the easier ones. I am actually doing the most difficult one, which is I don't know if you guys can see, but I'll put this up here. Is if you could see this Ewok on screen, I'm actually painting in all the fur with brush strokes. So I did this on my beast for MCP. But yeah, basically all the raised areas, or even where there was a raised area where I think there should just be some fur highlights, I'm just taking my really thin brush and I am just going deep.
Every little hair follicle one at a time.
Yep. It's a nightmare. But I've already committed and it looks good. So it's the right thing to do. It's just, you know, it's a lot. And I'm learning along the way. This is my first time really doing it this intense. You know, in the past I've used multiple different versions of this, and so I'm definitely learning. It's a different way of doing, this Ewok I just showed is went really well. I'm working on another one now that did not go as well, just because I think I went too dark on the like original base. And so it just looks strange now. So I've just got to build it up and make it better. But yeah, this is, so basically what I'm doing is I do a base, whatever I think the overall brown or fur color will be of the miniature. In this case, it's brown. Then once that's dried, I actually go over it with a watered down Nuln oil with a little bit of medium, just to get all the lows back in there. Then I come back over the top with a little bit brighter version of that brown. So I just add a little bit of ivory into that and bring it up a little bit. And then I hit most of the high areas and kind of the large swatches of places, just to get my 3. That's my 3. And then once I'm done with that, I come in with a little bit brighter with some more ivory in there and come hit all the highlights of the fur. And then I go with my final real bright, and then that's all the individual furs. And so yeah, so there is 4 or 5 layers to get to the top fur.
That sounds horrible. I'm not gonna lie. It sounds labor intensive. Let's put it that way. It sounds like it will look fantastic.
It is, yeah. I mean, they're coming out really nice, and the other thing I did too, for those of you that can see, like I'm doing all these custom bases for each. So that's how I'm going to tell my Ewoks apart.
Okay.
It is by their basing. So these guys are kind of on, in my mind, this was like maybe part of the Bright Tree town kind of fell down, and so they've got like the wood from the bridges and stuff like on the ground that they're jumping across. And so that's this squad. I've got another squad. So what I did was I took the downed ATST and I cut all the bits up, and I have the Ewoks all on down here. Hold on, let me see if I can grab one.
It's fantastic. Jay is currently
sorry guys, sorry.
Yeah,
but yeah, for everybody on video, so like here's the trapper, and he's on the back, the exhaust ports on the back of the ATST.
Yeah.
So that's his base. And then like here's the axe guy, and he's on a couple pieces of ATST that I cut up and put on there. So yeah, so then that squad's on ATSTs. Then there's one squad that's kind of like maybe on the outskirts of Bright Tree, where there's spikes and there's like stormtrooper helmets on the spikes and like dead stormtroopers on the ground that they're like jumping over. And then the other squad is just in the forest, and just in the regular forest. Yeah. So, and I've got, some of them got these cool plants that they're actually from Warhammer. But they look very much like ferns. So I just put those on there, and they're this nice like it's that soft plastic like the original Legion stuff was made of, and so like they don't break. Like you can kind of like mess, like if you hit them and they just bend a little, and then you just bend them back. So but yeah, no, this like these guys with the wood underneath, those are literally like actual those balsa wood like strips. And so I'm like custom making each piece I glued together and put on there. And it's real labor intensive. So, but like I've said from the beginning, I want to be able to bring that display board, and I want to win best painted army at these events. So
there you go.
We'll see.
Well, that's a good start, I would say.
Yeah.
So obviously probably the most labor intensive fur choice.
Yeah. Yep.
But certainly like if you want your fur to be looking really good, the other thing that allows you to do is achieve like subtle color differences in the fur.
Yeah.
If that's something you want to do, which with some of the masked painting techniques is more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult.
Right.
So like for example, Chewie, if you're painting Chewie's fur, he actually has like slightly different colored fur depending on what part of his body it is. So if you want to like achieve the level of detail on Can and Chewie to get like the slightly different colored fur, like around his wrists and ankles and stuff. Like, you might have to do some hair follicle painting.
I think Law Gray's like that too.
Law Gray,
yeah.
Now, of course, you could do a hybrid, right? You do the main coat of fur in one of these like more mass production models, and then do like the individual, like if you want to do like different fur around their face or whatever, you just do that specifically afterwards after you've done like the mass produced look. So real quick, the mass produced options. The first one is just simply contrast paints.
Yep.
Which is essentially like you use a special primer and then you slap a contrast paint over it. And fur lends itself nicely to that kind of thing because it is a texture that, it's a surface texture that has like a lot of crevices.
Yeah.
And then a lot of raised
crevasses.
Crevasses. So the texture paint kind of like runs into the deep areas and then leaves the hair follicles as like a lighter color.
Here's just quick recommendation. If for those of you who haven't done this before or use speed paints or contrast in this way, once you do this, you have to clear coat the model because all the contrast and speed paints will rub right off. They like, especially on those large areas like that. So once you're done, clear coat it before you touch that sucker because it's gonna come off.
It's good advice anyway, regardless of whether you're using contrast paint or not. But so that's kind of like option one. That's definitely probably the single fastest way to do it. There's option two, which is kind of the traditional like base coat wash dry brush style, and that's obviously you want to prime them anyway, but then you do a base coat of like kind of like a dark, like medium darkish fur color, whatever color you're going for, whether it's brown or gray or whatever. You do a base coat entirely in that. You throw a wash on top of it that's like a wash of that color, like a darker wash of that color. So if it's like a gray or something like that, you would throw like a Nuln Oil, like a black wash on it. If it's a browner color, you'd throw like a Grax Earth Shade is the GW brown wash, but some kind of brown wash on it. And then once that dries, then you go over it with a lighter color that you dry brush on top of it. And you could even do like a couple successive dry brushes if you want to do like a like a medium light color and then like a super light color after that. And that is the quote unquote traditional way to do fur in a way that is quick and also generally looks pretty good.
Yep.
That's how I've done most of my fur in the course of history. There is option 3, which is kind of a hybrid of that plus airbrushing, which is what I've done recently. And that's what like for example, this guy here, this is a Wookiee. You probably can't see him very well.
Put your hand behind it. Let's see.
Does this actually work? Doesn't seem to work for my camera like it does for yours.
Yeah. No, it didn't work at all. We tried.
No, not remotely. I guess I'm gonna have to get a better camera for these hobby episodes. But basically, what I did is I did the Zenithal thing, right? I primed black. I did a Zenithal white highlight. And then I did my my base coat, my brown base coat, followed by my slightly lighter coat at progressively steeper angles. So I did like the brown base coat from like a side to top angle, and then I did the lighter coat from like like a 45 top down angle, and then I did like an even lighter coat, like an almost white brown coat from straight down. And then after that, you still get some of the whatever crevices are still filled in. So I still went over that with a wash.
Yep.
And then after that, I still also did a dry brush, but it gets more of like a gradient on the undercoat when you use the airbrush like that.
Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Airbrushing technique for models like that. Okay. Do you hit the whole thing, like even the things that shouldn't be that color, and then just go back and paint over those like straps and stuff? You're not trying to just get the fur and skip the straps and everything.
No,
right.
That'd be horrible. Yeah,
that'd be insane. Okay,
right. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, I was thinking about it, and I saw some like master airbrusher just like doing just like the part he wanted to do, and I was like, that is like, I'm like, this is YouTube buffoonery. Like, there's no way he's doing that, and I'm sure he was. I'm sure because he's a master, right? But like, yeah, I was just like thinking, like, I don't think regular people do it that way. I think we just spray this whole thing and then go back and paint over the
no.
things we didn't want to be that color. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people paint with an airbrush like that. I do not know. I'm sure some of it is tools, right? That's a super tiny nozzle,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
it's also a lot of it is experience and technique, and that's not
yeah.
something that I have. So when I quote unquote paint with an airbrush, um, I do basically the whole model.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, like when I do OSL, which I've had mostly success with. Obviously, I messed up my most recent one, which I've talked about. But even like, I mean, this T47 that I showed earlier, this is actually the base coat on this is painted with an airbrush, and I did a darker color in the middle, and then I painted the sides with pure white.
Yeah.
And because of how an airbrush works, it has like a natural fade to it as you get further away from the point that you hit. So you can get like this natural fade effect with any color. I basically I aimed like here, right? Like not actually on the model, but like away from the wing, and went around, and then it got like this natural fade on the front part of the mini. And when you're doing vehicles with an airbrush, by the way, I took one airbrush class that Nova opened. This was super helpful. It's always good to like, you want the lighter colors at the front of the vehicle and the darker colors at the back, because it has like this, it kind of has this illusion of movement with your eye. So just a random.
So actually, another tip similar to that, and I would say different. So in contrast for the ATST, as the taller you go, the lighter you go, because then it makes it look taller. That's a trick. You know how I learned that from the Disney castle. So that's how they paint the Disney castle, is they use darker colors at the bottom and then lighter colors as they go up.
Makes it look taller.
It makes it look taller than it actually is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
There you go.
So
yeah. So I mean, that's basically like, there are definitely more than 3 ways to make fur, but those are the 3 I would say.
Those are the 3 non-insane ways to do it. Yeah, I'm doing it the insane way because I chose this. We'll see. After I get through 2 squads, like the other 4 may just end up being I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how intense this gets. But yeah. I okay. This is half competitive, half painting.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't see a world where I actually play a full Bright Tree Village.
That's fair.
I've been looking at a lot more lists with just I'm gonna play Ewoks, but they're gonna be in regular Rebel lists. So I'm like,
so
now I'm
you
going
only need to paint 2 units.
2 units, yeah, we'll see. But I'm gonna paint them all, and the thing I wish, and maybe they do, and maybe I just don't know enough about this. I think at the bigger shows like Adepticon and stuff, they do this where you can submit certain things into the painting contest, where like some events it's what you're playing with, which is submitted, and then there's I think if there's something like at Adepticon, like by then I don't know if I'll be playing Ewoks or not, depending on how the meta shakes out and where I'm at as a player. But I think I would probably bring the Ewoks as my paint submission, and then whatever army I'm playing with as my playing army.
Yeah, they've actually been doing that more recently at tournaments. LSO had they had 3 categories: army, unit, and individual model. And I brought, I submitted my clone army for army, and then I brought like an extra unit to submit for unit, and then I brought something else for individual model. So I'm sure that'll be like a thing that you can do.
That's what I'm gonna try to do. So anywho, well, I'm tired, Kyle.
Yeah, me too. That was good though. That was like an invigorating painting discussion with just enough competitive that hopefully people did not immediately turn off this cast this week.
Who knows? They're all still here.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and we didn't do any of our other nonsense, so there won't be any cuts this week. It'll all just be straight through, because we didn't do anything. We didn't do housekeeping. We didn't announce the segment. We just went for it. So
that's right. Perfect. We just plowed directly through.
Excellent. I'll have 2 timestamps. So the first one will be Jay and Kyle bullshit, and then the second one will be, and here's where we started talking.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I am Jay.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Stay cool, Fruit Mat.